and the Federation of Young Ibero-American Entrepreneurs. We're going to talk about how trade and investment can be the levers for the recovery in the EU area and in Latin America. We're going to have a roundtable with our panel. And so now I would like to ask Carlos Morales, who is the president of Madrid Platform, to take the floor, please. Hello, Carlos. Please give him a round of applause. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, this morning, I had the honor of inaugurating the event, but I'm going to be very brief because we have three speakers who are going to inaugurate the forum now. Madrid Platform is a reality since this morning. It's taken 2 years of great effort, huge amounts of effort. Thank you to a team. Thank you to the Town Hall of Madrid. Thank you for the government of Spain for helping us, for the regional authority, the institutions, the international organizations, the General Secretary of Ibero-America, the Confederation of Businesses. I'm sorry if I've left anybody out, but we really are very grateful to all of you and all of your support. We have spoken to 500 different companies, and around 100 of them are present here today. And I think that what we have been through is very important. What is Madrid Platform? Madrid Platform is a business hub which brings together 2 economic regions, Europe and Latin America, with one city, which is the center of this trade, which is Madrid. We are placing Madrid at the heart of the business. And Madrid is a business platform. And from here, we have 2 formats. We have this physical event, which is where we are today, 3 days of work, and the platform where all of the companies are hosted and will work so that next year we can come back to another event, because this is an event that is here to stay. Every May, we will come together for 3 days. But as I said, this is a platform, and that's what we want to do. We want Madrid to be an international player in the business world. I would like to hear I've enjoyed listening to the comments of those who have been on this platform before me, and I'd like to thank them. And particularly, I'm very happy to have heard from the companies, because without those companies, this would not have been possible. These companies, hand in hand with the public administration, are moving forwards and making progress. So thank you all very much. Welcome, everybody, to Madrid Platform. Thank you again, Carlos, and thank you. I would also like to say that we're also trying to be very strict with the timing today. So now I would like to invite Antonio Garamendi, who is the president of the Spanish Confederation of Companies, to the stage, and he is also the vice president of Business Europe.
Muy buenas tardes. Ya lo he acabado.
Good afternoon. Right, I finished. So that way I'll be able to respect the timing. No. The Secretary General of Ibero-America, Minister of Industry, Trade and Tourism of the Government of Spain, Carlos, the President of Madrid Platform. Greetings to all of you who are here in person and those of you who are watching us on the new systems that have arrived prior to the pandemic, but especially with the pandemic, these streaming systems. And this is these digital themes are at the heart of our work. This is an important day, as Carlos said, for many reasons. One is because this is a business forum. And here we have companies from both sides of the Atlantic. We can say good morning and good afternoon here. And there's an important role here. And Carlos made specific mention of the Madrid Town Council. And I think that they have a very clear vision of what the word Madrid means, and this entrepreneurial vision that we have for the other side of the Atlantic. And also, I think it's very visible here behind me that this is a collaborative effort, a collaboration between public authorities. So we have the Madrid Town Hall, also the Madrid Regional Authority, we have the Spanish government, we have institutions of all types. And I think that this is very important. And I would also like to underline the importance of unity in my role as the head of Spanish entrepreneurial businesses. And the reality is that Spain saw its international presence rise from 22 to 24%, and this was a consequence of this effort between the public and the private sector, and which is ongoing with the government of Spain, and that's why I'd like to thank the Minister for being here with us today. And then we also have the Secretary General of Iberoamerica, and I always say that this is the best friend of Ibero-American companies. We've worked very closely together with Rebecca. We've worked with the Organization for Ibero-American Companies, and we also have young entrepreneurs from Iberoamerica as well. And we also we have the subsecretary here for this, and we have been working together for a long time, and we are striving through and have worked throughout the pandemic to look at what is happening on either side of the Atlantic, the situation for companies. And we can talk about culture, languages, these are the things that we share, but it's not just that we share. We share huge amounts of things, and I think Madrid plays a very important role in this. Madrid is the capital of Spain, and it's the natural gateway to Europe. Madrid is a very welcoming city. Madrid's a city where nobody asks you where you come from, and I think that it's one of the true cosmopolitan centers of our country. It's got an air hub, we have Fitur, we have everything that we need to access not only Spain, which is a very important country, but the whole of Europe. And I am the vice president not only of Spanish companies, but also of European countries, and this is very important. There's lots of things for us to talk about. And indeed, there's so much to talk about, because I think we're probably going to cover most of the subjects over the next 3 days. But as we've said many times, we have agreements such as Mercosur, for example. We have the Pacific Alliance. There's so many things that we share, and where Spain is not just the entrance point to Europe, but it's also the entrance point to Africa. We have interests in Morocco, and Ibero-American business leaders have been working for a very long time to develop this. We've been working very hard in Andorra, and I believe that the headquarters will soon be located there, and I hope that the minister will come and see us there. And if we all work together, then we can achieve a lot more. And we can go an awful lot further. And that's what we want to achieve. We need to look at what brings us together. We need to make progress together. And I would like to thank you. And once again, please remember that we, as business leaders, would like to thank you for working together to make progress. Thank you very much, Antonio. Now I would like to invite Rebecca Greenspan to take the floor. Thank you. Dear Minister, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Commerce of Spain, dear Antonio Gramenti, thank you, Antonio, for everything that you've done, all the support that you give us with the organization in Andorra, and we will be able to produce an event which is so successful. Thank you very much for all the support you have provided us. Thank you, because we also have the young business leaders with us here today. So this alliance that has come together at this forum is the result of lots of work over lots of months, and so I would really like to thank all of you. Now, my friends at the town hall, again, thank you very much for the support that you have always given us. I can't start without celebrating this remarkable initiative which is being crystallized today with the launch of Madrid Platform. This is an excellent idea, and once we heard about it, we were very keen to be a part of it. And I would like to congratulate Carlos Morales, you as the president. Congratulations for what you've achieved, for all of this work that you've achieved, and this brilliant intuition that you had to create this product. This initiative has also been developed to improve the excellent relationships that already existed with Iberoamerica. There's 650 million people in this region, families, business companies, social links, cultural, scientific, and this living ecosystem has shown our strength in trade, and that this has brought us Madrid, which is the capital of Iberoamerica. Now, within the framework of the 27th Summit for Iberoamerica, even though we did this remotely, we wanted to say that after the great success of these events, Iberoamerica is more alive than it has ever been, and it is in a very strong position to strengthen the bridges that have always existed between Europe and Latin America. There's always been a great relationship between Europe and Latin America. On the one hand, the relationship was consolidated between 2010 and 2017 as the biggest investor in Latin America according to the last report. And as the global LATAM report, which will be presented later today, has said, the number of projects that were achieved between 2013 and 2020 saw Spain and Portugal as the second preferred destination for Latin American companies, just behind the US. And as Antonio just said, this is a much more bilateral relationship than it used to be, because there's investments going in both directions. Now, if we look at the figures of our international trade, then we can see a growing relationship between the rest of the world as well. Now, direct investment represents 76 million euros of investment, which is much higher than in 2011, which had been the boom period at the time. And today, we have 60% more than we had at this boom period. This allows the region to be an active player in growing the prosperity of the region. Now, there's lots still to do. Before the pandemic, Iberoamerica was becoming part of the global value chains. Today it stands at 18%, which is less than the 28% of Asia and the 34% of Europe. So there are lots of challenges for us to overcome. Another one is our inter-regional trade. So there is very low inter-regional trade in Latin America. At the moment, it stands at just 25% compared to, for example, the 60% that Europe has within its own inter-regional trade. Therefore, it's logical for us to think that if we could strengthen the bridge between Europe and Latin America, we could also become more integrated within Latin America. We have said many times that we have approved the Mercosur agreement. This is not just trade between Europe and Latin America, but also greater integration within Latin America. And with just the exception of 2 countries in the region, all of the countries in the region are part of this agreement, and now there can be new synergies and alignments with technological standards, for example. And this is what happens when we have these agreements, and the minister, I'm sure, will tell us in a moment about more of them and the progress that is being made with Mexico, for example, and we hope that this will also be for Mercosur. Now, with the pandemic, which in both regions created a historic recession and a drop of 13% of exports in Spain and 20% in Latin America, the other outstanding challenges have come together, and now we have to develop sustainable and inclusive economic growth. And today we are all together and we want to make this progress. Dear friends, before we start this event, we have to thank all the companies that are accompanying us, and not just for their physical presence, but for their tireless labor seen at the beginning, since the beginning of the pandemic, as they have reinvented themselves to overcome the challenges, that have done everything they can to sustain their families, their employees, their suppliers. Thank you to business leaders that, despite criticism, maintain, as I do, the conviction that without successful businesses, you can't have successful societies. Thank you to all of them for believing in this bridge between Europe and Latin America and the desire to share this success between the rest of the world, for generating networks that have reaches that go beyond what we could have imagined. Thank you for your initiatives, for showing that in this crisis, it's not just the question of the balance sheet and the bottom line, but there are also values of great importance. We have to build post-COVID societies that are more confident, that are able to reactivate the 21st century social dialogue that we need more than ever. The recovery will be difficult, but there is no fated destiny. We have to have hope, and There's a lot of hope here. We have a youthful society, a very committed society. This is the biggest between 15 and 29-year-old youth in Latin America. It represents a huge part of our population. We've never seen this population before, and the economy is accelerating its digitalization. The pandemic has been very difficult, but one of the things that it has created was this digitalization. Latin America was a region which used digitalization for leisure rather than for production, but the pandemic has changed all of that, and there's been a leap now in terms of productivity, and we have a world that is recovering its growth, particularly the accelerated growth that was not to be expected in America and in China. And these are also very positive factors for the Latin American region. Some are always talking about maybe a new super cycle of materials and primary materials commodities. We have many advantages in our region, and we're reaching historic heights, and hopefully we can take advantage of this and be part of value chains and develop aggregated value for our economies. But North and Latin America will be benefiting from this. And we hope that this is something that we will be able to take advantage of, all of these opportunities to enhance inclusion, for better governance, for better sustainability, and to ensure the ecological transition with the opportunities of the green economy, renewable energies, for the whole region. If we could do this, then this would be perfect. So let's take advantage of all of these opportunities. Not only can we set out the groundwork for a great decade between Latin America and Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Very energetic and optimistic message. Yes, ma'am. Well, it's a pleasure for me to welcome up here on the stage and formally open the next roundtable Ms. Reyes Maroto, who is Minister of Industry, Commerce and Tourism from the Government of Spain. Warm welcome. Good afternoon to all of you, dear Carlos, Chair of Madrid Platform, Antonio, Chairman of the COE, General Secretary. We'll see each other very soon, dear. Well, Rebecca was saying that this forum was very necessary because we hadn't held it before. We needed to be bold, and you were, Carlos, and this idea became a full-fledged reality. We're glad, as Antonio said, we need to be up to the task because Europe and Latin America need space beyond these 3 days, this 3-day meeting. And we need to be able to share our concerns, our projects, and as Rebecca said, we needed to share all of our plans for reconstruction. This is a huge priority. I wanted to thank you for inviting me to open this business forum. Undoubtedly, I think is already a major point of encounter between and among companies, businesses in Europe and Latin America, and it will bring together more than 3,500 attendants and more than 300 companies in person or virtually. This period means that We are at a turning point. There's been a before and an after, both in terms of the sphere of health, but also in international trade and even in mobility. We're starting to see the light at the end of the study with progress in vaccination, and we have to lend thought not only to how to overcome the pandemic, but also how to prosper and not leave anyone behind. And there I would like to highlight the proposal that we brought to Oporto at the Summit of Heads of States in order to step up the pace of vaccination throughout the world. The President of the Government of Spain presented this, and there's already open debate in society. The Biden administration itself openly raised the issue of suspending the TRIP agreement within the WTO for patents tied to COVID-19. The announcement of the Biden administration, of course, is a landmark along the way, but is not enough in and of itself. And the government of Spain this weekend proposed that this exemption not only cover vaccination, but we should also move to ensure access in all different countries. We need to step up global production of vaccinations and step up the distribution of these vaccines throughout the world. The proposal of Spain sent by our chairman to get present with Belgium, France, Sweden, and Denmark stated that there should be a mechanism in place and a declaration on the part of all EU member states. It's of no use, our president said, to make progress here if the rest of the world is left behind. And what we see in India clearly shows how dangerous COVID running out of control is. So we all need to recover economically. We need to recover economic strength and trade. We need trade between Spain and Latin America. And for Spain, it's a top priority for vaccines to reach Latin America, which will save lives, first and foremost, but also reactivate a very significant economic area once we've left this terrible pandemic behind. And in addition, we need to suit our international economic agenda to these changes triggered by the pandemic. We need to focus more on sustainability, on innovation. That's also very important. It's very important to be mindful of connectivity, and these are challenges that need to be on the agenda so that we can tackle the post-COVID era. Spain and Latin America have a lot to work on together to face challenges, and Madrid platform undoubtedly offers an extraordinary opportunity to bring our ties closer. Latin America is a priority in our foreign relations and trade. Spain is the second, behind the United States, investor country in Latin America, far ahead of other EU partners. And Spanish companies in highly prestigious sectors such as infrastructure, specialized engineering, new technologies, have alleviated poverty and helped Latin American countries modernize. And as Rebecca was saying, a growing number of Latin American companies also choose Spain to internationalize, not only because we have structural factors that make us an optimum location, but also because from Spain we can access the EU and also Africa. from our government. In our government, we are also working hard on Africa. Spain and Latin America have grown a lot, and the relations have increased twofold over the last 10 years. Speaking of trade, but if we look at forecasts for Spain and Latin America for 2021, we can see that our economies will recover, things will reactivate. And this is, of course, necessary if we want prosperity and economic recovery for both of our regions. We firmly believe that this will be a pillar in our recovery, as it was in 2008. Last year, we implemented a plan, a joint plan with the COE, working with exporting companies and involving more than 6.6 billion euros. We worked with FIM, we worked with SMEs, we worked on exports and the impact because of the pandemic. Now is the time that we need to think of the post-COVID future. We need to envisage our investment and our trade relations after the pandemic, once we're vaccinated. And we're working on 3 different areas to bolster Spanish companies' position in the medium and long term, focusing specifically on Latin America. And first of all, I would like to mention Carlos, sometimes coincidences bring good news. We're going to bring our plan of action to internationalize our companies in Spain. We're going to be debating this at the Council of Ministers tomorrow. We're going to try to preserve the wealth of companies, businesses that regularly export, and we want this to be a pillar for growth and growth in employment. We need to focus on resilience as the third objective, resilience of international trade in potential future crises. And we have a specific area of the plan that has to do with trade between Spain and Ibero-America. We have, as you know, a lot of different economic and trade offices in Latin America, virtually every country in the region, and we're also supporting programs like PASO, IFISNEX, and others. We're trying to provide innovation for sustainable development and social inclusion. We have a SYNAP program for startups. We hope that these programs will be used a lot by startups or companies that are based on technology, companies that want to trade internationally. In addition, Spain is broadening this out to its multilateral work in the region, its work with the Central American Bank for Integration, the CAF, and the Inter-American Development Bank. We're working on these multilateral fronts in financial institutions. We're developing in internationalization, and the idea is to progress towards new areas of free trade between Europe and Latin America. And as Rebecca said, we have on our agenda very significant agreements. For instance, the Mercosur agreement, the association agreement or partnership with Chile, and Spain is working on these agreements very sturdily because they will bring about earnings, efficiency, cost reduction, and in the medium to long term, we believe that they will generate better growth and economic development. And we also have a system of agreements, 18 agreements, and 13 dual tax agreements addressing that issue. This is all very significant.
This
Is a way to progress over the next few months and weeks. We will make strides on these agreements that will further our relations. Thirdly, and lastly, we are working on our commitment and participation in the Pacific Alliance. Spain is the second investor. Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru are the other countries, and we're working together in the framework of this alliance. We undoubtedly believe that there'll be a lot of opportunities there. Trade relations between Spain and Latin America will certainly grow. There's a tremendous potential there. The ties between Spain and the European Union with Latin America are important and will still be playing a leadership role in forging more agreements, in working on training and promoting internationalization of businesses. We believe that this will give us great benefit on both sides of the Atlantic. I wish you a promising future, and you can rely on the government of Spain and the different ministries. And from now until we see each other again in May 2022, you can count on us. We'll be doing a lot of work to foster good trade relations and cooperation between Spain and Latin America. I'm sure that we'll have a promising future ahead of us on both sides of the Atlantic. So thank you very, very much. Congratulations once again for this initiative, on this initiative. Okay, thank you very, very much to our Minister of Commerce from Spain. And now we're going to have a hybrid round table called Promoting Trade in a Global Environment. And I think that, Emilia, you can make your way up. Emilia Perez, who is the Director for Economy from the news agency EFE. I think that you can choose where you would like to sit. This is, again, a hybrid format. We will also have other professionals. I believe that for the time being, we only have Dante Mossi, who's executive chair of the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. And we also have Mr. Roberto Zamora with us. Dante, I believe you're there? My name is Ángel Mellizo. Oh, this is Murphy's Law, isn't it? Ángel Mellizo. I hope you can hear us well. Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much. I don't know whether we also have Dante with us. Don't worry about that. You'll see that over the next few minutes, we'll have Mr. Juan Costa Clement, who is the chair of the Propósito Foundation, and we'll also have another participant from Nicaragua. It's all yours. Take it away. All right. Well, good afternoon to all of you. Now we're going to move on to a roundtable where we're going to be analyzing channels with which we can work on trade, which is severely damaged by this pandemic. We have economic parameters in terms of inequality and unemployment that we haven't seen for the bulk of a century. We're going to be talking about investment. As we heard, investment works in both directions, and that will contribute to relaunching our economy. and we heard the introduction. We have wonderful speakers with us. One of them is sitting with me here on the stage, and others are in different cities, some in Latin America. I'm going to introduce them. We have in Honduras, Mr. Dante Mose, who is the executive president of the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. I'd like to thank him for being with us. He will be very shortly. And we have Mr. Ángel Melguizo, who's vice chair for External Affairs and Regulatory Affairs for AT&T DirecTV in Latin America. Thank you very much for being with us. We have, or will have, Mr. Roberto Zamora, who is representing La FICE, the financial group, and Mr. Juan Costa Clement, who is chair of the Propósito Foundation. And here, sitting with me, we have Ms. Almudena Mayo, who is the Secretary General for the Ibero-American Capital Cities Union. Delighted to be with you. So we're going to have all of our speakers address how the crisis has affected trade and investment. So perhaps we can start with you, Mr. Melguizo. You can tell us about your own sector, the digital sector. How has the pandemic impacted you in investment and trade? Both very important. I believe we're unable to hear the speaker. I don't know whether we can hear. Well, very unfortunately, there are technical difficulties. Then it might be a good idea to begin with Almudena Mayo. What about your perception? Are we able to take off our masks to speak? I do hear you. I do hear you. Well, I think we'll continue, and then we'll go back to that connection. What's your perception? Well, first of all, I would like to thank Madrid Platform. I am the city councilor for tourism, and it's good to have this going on. We will be analyzing this, of course, but as we've heard from our minister and from Rebecca and Carlos, we need to continue with this forum co-organized by Madrid Platform itself and the Madrid City Council. Now, how has the pandemic affected us? Well, it hit us very hard, predictably, and it hit us straight at the heart of trade. Both trade and tourism have been hit the hardest. I think that one of the lessons I've learned, this has been a very tough year. We've started working differently in different ways at our Union of Ibero-American Capital Cities. We've worked with young entrepreneurs. We've joined together with alliances, and we have different capacities or capabilities to respond. Sometimes things are just beyond our capacity. Another thought of mine is that particularly our cities have realized that we are the level of government that's closest to citizens in order to try to solve their problems. We have to be able to respond to what our citizens need. And it's important for us to deal with everything that affects commerce and tourism. We have to also face climate challenges. So it hit us very hard. That's the answer to the question. But we've also learned to relate to each other differently and work in alliance, realize how important it is to collaborate, to cooperate truly. We don't want this to be just a slogan.
I think this is a clear message that we gave to all the businesses, and that was fundamental. So my message to you is we need to work in alliance. Obviously, because all the problems were common and shared problems with different latitude, but shared with all businesses. Yes, of course, we saw networks that allowed us to be in permanent contact and see how we responded to the common problem. We didn't have really solutions or SOP for all the problems, so we had to share solutions, and that was very beneficial for us to see how others dealt with the problem. So that was very useful. We opened common avenues, and the solutions sometimes were unexpected. Let's see if we recovered the link with our guest. So, from your point of view, how did everything pan out in order to face the problems? Let's see if we... Yes, we can hear you now, yes. Well, good morning, everyone. Here. Well, here you have a person from Madrid living in Bogota. I deal with legal issues for AT&T in Latin America, but I'm really delighted to be speaking to you. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to add something to what Almudena explained. 2020 was an unprecedented year. We are thinking about a region, Latin America, and 5 to 10% was the contraction of the economy. Let's say that it is equivalent to Argentina, that contraction of the economy. So if we add the unequal impact, when the technology allows us to work, I was able to telework, to train myself, but many Latin Americans couldn't, and that reflects and shows how different the impact was. So that lost decade could be could amount to 2 decades in Latin America. So it's a time for reactivation. For a company like AT&T, telecommunications company, the solution stems from the digital solution. And I really take advantage of what Almudena said. It was an unprecedented year for challenges, but also for when it comes to innovation. Those platforms are the ones that allow us to work, to be trained, to be entertained, to do transactions. The telecommunication structures are really working, and they are really supporting a maximum charge and load that couldn't be expected from one day to the next one, to work everybody from home with those that great amount of traffic. That was unprecedented, and we sat together with the governments and we said, from the digital sector, we know we are important, we are key. How can we ensure that those Latin Americans that cannot pay their services are not going to be left out, because they're vital? And from the private sector, what can we suggest to the governments to ensure the working of the financial markets? That was 2020, and now we really need to take steps. Digital trade, digital commerce, digital transactions, because we cannot allow so many Latin Americans to be left out from the internet. That 1 out of 2 schools is no connection, that The bandwidth is so limited, the speed is so limited, very few schools use internet to be trained, so that was a general call. We don't know when the post-COVID is going to arrive. Unfortunately, we are lagging behind when it comes to vaccination, at least 2 months compared to Spain. So I'm really making here a call. We don't know when the post-COVID era is going to arrive, but we know that it's going to be more digital than it was before the pandemic, and that PPP, public-private partnership, is going to, it needs to be stronger between regions, Latin America and the United States. That's the only way ahead. That's what I want to leave to you by way of message. I don't know if we have connection with Mosi. Unfortunately, there's only the three of us, so let's speak about the impact on tourism and commerce, trade. Well, obviously, tourism is one of the most hardly hit sector industry. Tourism, not only for families, but also events, etc. Well, we're doing a great job from the cities. The capitals obviously are the most attractive places, but we do have a great potential that we have to really take advantage of, and we are launching a tourism strategy in which we want to establish and show the world how tourism can be that tool that will allow economic recovery. Governance in tourism based on sustainability can really provide that push for economy. We speak about tourism sometimes in a negative way, and we have to really see it in a positive way because it has an impact on society and the exchange of experiences and a source of income for not only for cities but for countries and regions in general. So this is the impasse where we're trying to leave behind, and we are trying to reach a tourism governance situation somewhat different from the one we had in cities. So we have to provide cities for citizens and attractive for tourists in the second place. So that's an opportunity we have to grasp, and I think we're doing a great job to determine what has to be done and what hasn't. What doesn't. So this is an opportunity, and the economic recovery for cities is there, and that's an export challenge also, or opportunity, because tourists will then buy some wine, for example, from Madrid, that excellent wine we have here in Madrid, and that's really something which is very attractive for the industry. It's a very important moment we're living now for tourism. I think it's going to recover, and we have a great potential and resources that are the envy of the rest of the world. Well, some things are going to stay the same, many things that we have already got used to. Yes, but some kind of tourism with experiences. We're really fed up with screens and computers. We want to see things, touch things, and I hope culturally interesting journeys will be back soon, and hope they won't have that negative impact. And future policies are going to be very important. You have Ángeles and Juan. So Roberto and Dante are out, definitely. They have no connection. Can you hear me? Mr. Costa, can you hear me? No, I'm afraid he can't.
Señor Melguizo, le vuelvo a plantear, aquí en España sí que lo hemos visto, el sector digital, el sector telco sobre todo, ha permitido que la actividad, parte de la actividad siguiera funcionando, parte de la digitalización,
most
el
of the
ocio,
activities to
muchas
go on.
situaciones.
Teleworking.
En América Latina ha habido mucho contraste.
Has there been a great deal of contrast in Latin America? Did that allow great part of the telecom sector to go on working? Well, it's been a very unequal situation. I think the pandemic and the unprecedented crisis when it comes to the impact on the economy and the external commerce really increased the differences. Access to internet was one of the biggest. Those who are connected are living the challenge of connectivity. We're experiencing that here in the conference. Those of us who were connected, more or less, were able to go on with our productive lives. But one out of three Latin Americans couldn't because they have no connection. And even those who were connected, not always enjoyed the quality that allowed them to produce correctly. So that's why the gap is getting wider. And from AT&T, from the digital sector and the telco, we say we have to act now very fast. And as Almudena said, we have to close the gap when it comes to connectivity. We have to invest as we have never done, and that cannot be done by Latin America on its own, given the fiscal situation. We have to close the gap when it comes to skills, competences. There are many economic opportunities, but 4 out of 10 companies, for example, say, I'm looking for an employee, but I cannot find one with the required skills. We do find soft skills sometimes, but analytical skills, we have to really know where we're going, and digital skills are not there. And lastly, from our point of view, we only see really a progress when it comes to closing the gap in the socio-economic aspect if we manage smart regulation of the digital economy. We didn't have Cabify, Globo, or those companies some years ago, some years back. So many things have changed. We are optimistic in that sense. We think that Latin America is a very young and really prosperous region, but we have to give them a hand because those socio-economic gaps for SMEs are very big, and especially those who have those fiscal disadvantages, really, they have to be assisted. So work together, cooperate, and as Almudena said, we were forced to do that. This is a digitalization that was done forcefully. So let's take the opportunity and the inputs. Yes, but that, on the other hand, has made the digital world more attractive to really capture investments and really implement digital economy. Has that happened in Latin America? Yes, many companies flourished. Everything related to digital flourished in Latin America. We see young people mobilized with great ideas, many projects. Those of us who are maybe older and think we're going to work in one company and then another, they think, okay, I'm going to create my own startup. They really skip those very rigid and strict steps we followed in the past. And that's where there's a link between innovation and creativity in Spain. if you add that to the creativity in Latin America, there's only way ahead, I think, and only advantages to gain. And from my own point of view and my role in externally speaking and from a regulatory point of view, we have to connect everybody. We have to train them for the new marketplace. We don't know when it's going to arrive, but that's what we have, and that's what we have to do. And digital ecosystem that has to be respectful. And there, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, we have to speak about the use of data, because the use of data is important to really to respect and take into account in the new developments in the digital world. I think Mr. Costa was able to log in. I would like to ask him the same initial question. How was the impact in the trade, commerce and investment during the pandemic? Mr. Costa. No, he's not there. Same problems. We cannot hear you. Now we can hear you. Okay.
Creo que ahora sí.
Go ahead.
Muy bien, bueno, pues muchas gracias
okay,
a
thank
todos,
you,
muchas gracias a
thank
Madrid
you.
FinTech por este entorno.
Congratulations,
vamos a ver,
Madrid,
dentro de en nuestra compañía como DACRI, que nos movemos en un contexto
Now, in this situation, we find ourselves
no deja de ser un
immersed
mundo
in
que en muchos casos corre paralelo al tema FinTech.
context which is parallel
yo
to
diría
fintech.
Básicamente esta pandemia,
And I would say
más que
that
esta
the
pandemia,
pandemic,
pues
more
casi
than
el
the
exceso de
pandemic,
liquidez, ¿no?, que está existiendo
excess of
actualmente en los
liquidity
mercados.
that
Si dejamos un poco el
does
bache de
prevail
los primeros
in
meses
the
que
markets,
sucedieron con el año pasado con el tema de COVID,
if we exclude
pues yo
the
diría
glut initially
que si
in
no ha
the markets
sido,
because
si no
of the
podemos referirnos de un
COVID, if we
acelerador, por lo
cannot
menos no ha sido un freno, ¿no?
really
creo
lift
que
our
está de
foot from
más,
the accelerator, at
está de
least
más recordar que ha
it
habido
was not
rondas B, rondas A y rondas C
like
de financiación
stepping on the brakes
que se publican
all of a
diariamente
sudden.
en prensa.
If we see
Nosotros particularmente, que
the
somos
news
una compañía
published on the
cotizada
specialized
en el
press,
Nasdaq,
we
y
are
además
a
fuimos una
public
compañía cotizada que se
company
lanzó al mercado en el mes de agosto de
that is
2020,
quoted on Nasdaq,
Entonces, bueno,
and it
pues
was
creo que
launched
también
in
somos un buen
August
ejemplo de
2020.
que de
I
alguna
think
manera,
that's a great
pues
example of
en esta
somehow
época,
during
insisto,
the pandemic.
no sé, si bien no sé si podemos hablar de aceleración, desde luego lo que no ha habido es
I mean, we
una
cannot
ralentización,
obviously
al
speak
menos
about
en el
acceleration,
contexto
but at
insurtech
least
en el que nosotros
there's
estamos.
no
¿Cuáles serían las palancas para impulsar
slowing
el
of the
comercio y la
activity.
inversión?
What would be the
convertirlas en palancas para la
levers
recuperación?
so that you can
¿Cuáles
really
serían un poco
speak
las
about
recetas desde su punto de vista?
recovery?
Bueno, recetas es un poco difícil. Yo
Recipes, I
diría
wouldn't
casi
speak about recipes. I would
por
say
ejemplo,
that,
pues un
for
entorno...
example, we lost the sound, unfortunately.
Volvemos a perder.
We lost Mr. Costa.
Vaya, estamos teniendo muy mala suerte hoy con la parte técnica.
We're not being
pero
lucky
sí que
with
se lo
the
quiero
technical
plantear también la
side,
misma
but
pregunta a la señora Maillo,
I would like to ask the
¿cuáles
same
deberían ser,
question
en qué se debe
to
poner el foco
Ms.
para hemos hablado de
Maillo.
algunas de las alianzas, el
Where
impulso de la
would you
digitalización, ha esbozado un
put the
poco la parte de la
focus
economía
on
verde, ¿no? El cuidado del medio
if we
ambiente.
want to reach
¿Cuál debe ser el
recovery?
foco,
You spoke about
las
the
palancas sobre las que pivotar esta
green
recuperación?
side
Estamos
and
tanto en España como en los otros países
sustainability.
iberoamericanos.
What would you insist
Yo creo
upon?
que una de las palancas
Well, one of the
fundamentales es
levers,
la
I think,
seguridad
would be
jurídica, primero, ¿no?
legal
Para-
certainty,
ya sabemos que el dinero siempre
because
es miedoso a cualquier cambio, ¿no?
obviously
Por lo tanto,
investments
establecer
fear
esa
uncertainty, so
seguridad
legal
jurídica,
certainty is
y
paramount,
hacer ciudades
and
atractivas, ¿no? a la
attractive
inversión, ¿no? Por eso,
cities
desde
for
Madrid
investment.
apostamos desde el primer
From
momento,
that point of view,
cuando comenzamos con la
in
pandemia,
Madrid, when we
en
started with the
ayudar a las
pandemic,
empresas
we
a que,
thought
con
about
su alivio
really
fiscal, ¿no? Dentro de las
assisting
competencias que
companies
tenemos.
and
Porque es
businesses with
importante que cuando una
fiscal
empresa está
cuts,
pasando mal, no le está pasando mal la
because
empresa
when
solo, sino
they
todos los
are
trabajadores
suffering, the
que
companies,
tienen a su cargo. Por
it's
tanto,
not only
yo
the
creo que
company
ponernos
suffering,
en
but
el lugar de la empresa, para que alivien esta
employees
crisis
as
que
well.
están
So that's
viviendo,
what
y luego
we
además
had to
quieran volver a invertir
really
en las
put as
ciudades y
by way
seguridad y
of
buscar
effort from our
estabilidad,
side,
estabilidad
the
jurídica,
institutional
bajar
side,
impuestos, quitando
provide and bring about legal
la
certainty,
normativa, ¿no?
reduce
Estableciendo una
and
normativa más
lower
sencilla. Yo creo
the
que ese es el camino
taxes. I think
a
that's a
que,
way really
las ciudades vayan
for
recuperando
cities
económicamente
to
también esa estabilidad que
reach
tienen los
that
países.
recovery
A
point.
lo largo de esta pandemia y más en estos
So
últimos
around
meses que
the
ya se están poniendo en marcha algunos,
pandemic,
imagino, proyectos
some
o intentando
projects
poner en marcha
that
proyectos para la
we have
recuperación.
already
¿Cuáles están siendo las
seen for
tendencias en las
recovery,
distintas
what were the
ciudades? ¿Qué están trabajando?
trends in
¿Algún
different
proyecto
cities?
que nos pueda
Can you
contar
speak about
para intentar lanzarlo?
any particular
Hablaba mi
project? Well,
compañero antes, yo creo que la
my colleague spoke about
digitalización, que antes era una
digitization
opción,
or
ahora es una
digitalization,
necesidad, ha venido para quedarse, además de esto nos ha hecho hacer unos
that
avances
stemmed from really a great need, but it's here to stay. I think that that digitization used correctly is key. In tourism, for example, we have to really get ahead of the right tourist that has some requirements, and that's really a must for all cities, and really close that digital gap, because we don't have the same opportunities. The fact that we are having this forum with Latin America wouldn't be possible without the digitization and that breakthrough in technology. So one of the basic levers, and you won't be there if you don't understand it, is digitization and working together, cooperating, and giving way to investment. And sustainability, you spoke about sustainability before. Yes, sustainability, you have to be careful, because sometimes it's such a big word, so wide. If you really leave it without context, it's really too wide. We have to take into account the right experiences for tourists. If we take into account that they're not only coming to a congress, but sometimes they come here to purchase typical products from the region or from the city that can really take into account the lowest possible carbon footprint and the right products that will help and will assist in the development of society as a whole, and the market, and that everybody will reach their own opportunity, for example, in tourism. And again, what about the concerns? Is that the same as for the rest of the cities, great cities? Yes, we'll think about firstly, how are we going to manage? And secondly, how can we help those who are suffering the most, people who have been infected by COVID and are ill in hospital, and then retraining, reskilling people who lost their job. I think we recovered the connection with Mr. Mossi. Let's see if we're lucky enough and we'll be able to listen to him. What was the consequence of the crisis regarding vis-à-vis commerce and trade?
Muy buenas tardes.
Probably have relevant data to provide. Yes, thank you for inviting me. The connection is not the best, but we'll try to understand what Mr. Mossi says. This event is proof of there's always an opportunity for every challenge, and in the case of COVID-19 for Central America, the impact was huge, but I'm really pleased to say that this month, all the presidents and heads of state of Central America met and decided to close their borders to traffic. I think that's the good news. It was a disaster after all. It never happened before. The production went on as usual, for example, agriculture, and for countries like Panama, Costa Rica. However, the switch for other countries was easier because the productive industry worked correctly. But I think that Central America really benefited from the fact that they had a Central American bank that assisted with vaccines, and they could intervene very quickly for emergency funds for member states and for the private sector. So the impact was very serious, but the plans existent before the pandemic had been delayed somewhat, but they were are still kept alive, and they're very important if we really want other companies to come to Central America, because we need that funding and investments, and we're ready to help. And then I would like to extend my acknowledgement and thanks to the European Union, especially Spain. Spain, as a European member state, really helped us a great deal. We have Mr. Costa with us. What was the impact of the pandemic? No, we don't have Mr. Costa. Or Mr. Zamora, then. Is he there?
Muy buenas.
Yes.
Gusto en saludarlos.
Hello.
Y es un placer aquí estar con todos ustedes.
A great pleasure to be here with you. From my standpoint, the impact of the pandemic was a disaster, really.
El daño ha sido muy grande. Tenemos economías que han decrecido 19% como en Panamá.
Economies that
fue la más golpeada, fue la que más estuvo
lost 19%, like Panama.
Tenemos
Most
economías como Nicaragua que no esperábamos que
countries
tuvo un decrecimiento de 2.5%.
Nicaragua that shrunk 2.5%. The investment fell 40% from
$9.900 millones
$300 million to $5,900
El Producto
million.
Interno Bruto cayó en un 7%, la caída de las exportaciones casi un 8%, y esto conlleva a que se estima que hoy hay más de 40 millones
which leads us to think that we have 40 million unemployed people in Latin America. So, people that are on the border of poverty, that's really a powder keg, because it's 33% of the whole population of Latin America. Apart from that, the extreme poverty is growing immensely, and FAO is really doing their utmost to bring food to the population, and that's really a great damage in the food chain in Latin America. So, in summary, the situation is very dire. On top of that, we had two typhoons that affected the economy. Other kinds of problems, like impacts in the early leavers in school, the food risk, the malnutrition in children, which will have consequences really very soon. The future is rather bleak, because in a situation of normally restrictions in food and food deficit, we're going to see consequences in their health. So I would like to make call from here. We have survived, we have managed to follow our path and be not only part of statistics, just a number of figures in line with the companies that were lost, the jobs that were lost. We managed to maintain employment somehow, and companies functioning. I think that deserves some recognition, because we are fighting to survive vis-a-vis so many disasters. And let me just go ahead and reply to the second question. The opportunities for Spain and Latin America are great, and I would like to focus on that side. Yes, that links with the second question, obviously, Mr. Zamora. There's a great challenge in Latin America. What is the role of new stakeholders and players looking for a solution for this crisis? That's for you, Mr. Zamora, again. Yes.
Ok, como dice el dicho popular, dice que
So there's a saying that says, after the storm, there's a calm. And now I think we have to play a very creative role. We all have to be creative. Nobody was really ready. Nobody dreamt about or had the really nightmare of this kind of damage, but the imagination was so huge. It's part of our daily routine. And I think that the economic recovery has to start by financial recovery. That has to be really a healthy situation. There was a crisis that had to do with health, but the recovery has to go through financial recovery. If you speak about recipes, there has to be a public-private partnership. There's no other formula to create jobs that other than investment, and investment. Therefore, if you want investment, you need funding, and that's a role you need to play. I would like to commend the chairman of the BCI because they have played an immense role in Latin America and many other countries, BCIE, and that was really commendable from their side. That was really something essential when you're facing problems. So congratulations, Executive President of the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. So there's a great deal of regulation. We cannot be so aggressive. We're all in the midst of a great crisis. 2 million companies shut down. There's a great uncertainty. There's fear, basically. So there's where governments have to intervene and coordinate their measures. Why? Well, because there has to be a great flexibility in regulation, because if regulation is not flexible, we cannot make investment and funding reach the company. So that's so important, because governments really have to guarantee, and that's something they're doing in the financial system, to really intervene in areas that have to do with SMEs, because the region, apart from the negative side, they are facing a very different recipe. We are seeing a different scenario. We are witnessing how the American economy is growing. It's growing 6%. There are $1 trillion in the economy. Those trillions and trillions of dollars really have a repercussion in our economy. They have impact in our maquila, in our manufacturing processes. They have intervention in our markets. So that's latent, that's there. And the number of funds sent back home from the immigrants are paramount, and we are seeing how this is also a political problem. The government is trying to see how, through the funding, going to provide $4 billion to those countries to improve their economy and put a halt to migration. That's a $4 billion program that will reach those Central American countries. And if we are in the receiving end and we have guarantees, we are going to be aggressive when it comes to funding. Why? Well, because if we don't do that, the system won't allow us to be so aggressive in the SME side. All our products, all our farming products have very low prices, whereas in the rest of the world, the prices of food is going up, so it can lead to conflict, and the recovery can be faster than predicted, but we have to go step by step, and there are great projects from the Spanish side. We have contact with all Spanish businesses, companies, banks. We have guarantees for utilities, projects. Every day we have funds that are really financed by BCI, and we know every day new Spanish companies that are trying to reach the Central American region, and that's the key for the forum to really make the most of it. So I would say that the future is very rosy, and people are desperate to travel after vaccines. Costa Rica, for example, is one of the most advantaged countries when it comes to tourism, and Panama is going to grow. Suffered a greatest recession last year. So what we are facing, and this is a very great opportunity, we are really witnessing those opportunities. So congratulations for the Spanish entrepreneurs, Central American entrepreneurs, and all the people promoting this kind of fora. Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you. Financing, private financing, how to promote it, and public financing. This lack of integration in South America, is it an added problem? Because in Europe, we've seen that a recovery plan was approved. Could this happen in Latin America? Is it desirable? Of course. First off, Central America has something that's very similar to the EU. There is a Central American market, single market, that's very similar to the EU market in a number of ways. It's not perfect, but it works. And as a matter of fact, it is part of this Latin American integration. The solution to our problem in Central America is scaling. Why is that important? If we take into account individual countries, sure, perhaps they're not as relevant, but Central America is the fourth biggest economy in South America. It's got over 60 million people living there. It's not a tiny, small market. It is perhaps a relatively small economy, but it's powerful. And the plan that was recently proposed is for $4 billion for Latin America. And for Central America, there's an investment plan that amounts to $15 billion, and that has to do with integration as well. Something we can certainly bring to the table, and something that we've been talking about during the pandemic, is that we lack the proper medical equipment, we lack healthcare professionals. So one project consists in creating a biopark to speed up the vaccination process. So we're innovating. We stopped investing in the textile sector. We're innovating. We're dreaming big. We're talking about $1 billion worth of investments in the area. We're talking about risk capital investment funds specifically for Central America. And through this cooperation with Spain, we want Spanish companies, SMEs, to benefit from the project as well. Spain, I think, has a natural advantage. We'll soon unveil, if everything goes according to plan, the electric train San Jose. Now, we have two similar projects for Costa Rica. One on the Atlantic coast of Costa Rica, and the other one connecting Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala. We also have projects in the Dominican Republic and Honduras for electric railways. So this shows that we're attracting investments from friendly countries, and as Mr. Zamora was saying, this is truly a crisis of the ideas, a crisis of innovation. It's not a crisis of the resources. I used to go to Madrid all the time before the pandemic, and I remember once I was chatting to the mayor, and I asked him, where'd you get these electric buses? I want them for public transport in Central America. So this means that we have the same agenda. Our region is not rich in oil, but it is rich in renewable energies, wind, a lot of sunlight, etc. And we want to use those. We hereby encourage Spanish companies who are interested in renewable energies to do their business in Central America. We're not asking them to give us a gift. It's a win-win. And at the same time, we're asking our public sectors to invest in electric mobility, which is a sector where Spain has covered a lot of ground recently. There are lots of initiatives in Spain that I would like to replicate in Latin America. One final announcement, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but our risk factor is AA. The only nation in Latin America that has such a high risk assessment, a risk ranking, and we want to create a strong bond with Spain. We want Spain to be our ambassador in Central America, and I hope to be with you in Madrid soon, and I hope we'll be able to inaugurate our offices very soon so we can put in touch Spanish and Central American businessmen with one another. We're here to learn from the crisis, and we're here to innovate. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was the end of our debate. We talked about alliances, the digital sector, we talked about tourism, sort of vamped up version of tourism after the crisis, and we also said that the economic recovery must be backed up by the financial sector. A big round of applause for our speakers, and let us now move on to the next session of today's event. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for Emilia Perez, our marvelous moderator. She pulled off something great, really, because technology is here to help us, but sometimes it fails to do so. It's the so-called technological disruption. The organization would like to apologize for the technical difficulties that we have experienced. We'd like to apologize in particular for, well, to those who weren't able to intervene, and we'd also like to apologize to our public and to those of you who are following us online. We're about to wrap up the first day of this Madrid platform event, and we're going to do so with a beautiful final session whereby we'll be talking with Mr. Adrián Blanco from LATAM Desk and EDEX, and Pablo Adrian Hardy from the Ibero-American General Secretariat. So a big round of applause to our last two speakers of the day. Please take a seat. Thank you. Good evening.
Aquí estamos los dos Adrianes, ¿no? Para presentar
Here we are, the two Adrians, to moderate the third edition of the Global LATAM report. If we've made it to the third edition of this report, it's because we've been doing something right, quite obviously. The report has a large scope in Latin America for a number of reasons, but I'm saying this as a user as well, as a user of this information. It reflects investment fluxes going in and out of Latin America, as well as investments that are made from one country into another. It's quite late, so I'll try being brief, but there are a couple of reflections I'd like to make upon the report. The report, as we all know, is about investments in 2020, which was a very difficult year globally, a year that had, of course, for a number of reasons, a huge impact on Latin American economies. So 5 ideas that I'd like to share with you. One, regarding direct foreign investment from Spain. It's obvious that, given the international situation in 2020, direct foreign investments in the region have been affected somehow. Although we have to acknowledge that foreign investments from Spain into the region had been decreasing in the previous year leading up to the pandemic. For example, in 2019, the investment amounted to a little over $6 billion, less than 2014, although 2014 was a very strong year in terms of investment. On top of that, we had COVID, so we went from the investment levels of 2014 to $3.5 billion. That's a 75% reduction. In Latin America, 2020 was one of the worst years that we have information about in history. The pandemic caused, for sure, the worst economic recession in a century, and that had some dire consequences. A rise in poverty, inequality, violence, famine. According to the Inter-American Development Bank, interregional exports decreased by about 11% compared to 2019. In the case of interregional investments within Latin America, there was also a decrease of about 10%. But I think we can be a little optimistic. There are another 4 elements I'd like to take into account. One, we are leaving this crisis in a very different way than we left the 2008 crisis, through tax stimuli and fiscal policies, and also thanks to the so-called green transition and digital technologies. On top of everything else, the Chinese and American economies have been recovering greatly, peaking almost, and this is expected to have an impact on the Latin American region. It could even lead to a super cycle of raw materials, which we have started to appreciate on some market, and this is particularly important for Latin American and southern countries. And let's not forget about renewable energies. In Latin America, there are more and more companies that are investing in renewable energies. On top of that, the local population is greatly concerned about environmental issues. Mineral reserves, mineral supplies, for example, lithium, are critical for Latin America. For example, Venezuela has one of the largest reserves and supplies in the world. And then finally, as Adrian will be able to tell you in more detail later, in the last 20 years, over half of risk capital investments in the region have been made into the sectors of software development, IT, or technology. Over $1.5 billion have been invested in these sectors. That's 5 times as much as other investments in the region. Over to you, Adrian.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for both of us to be here
presenting the results of the third report, a joint effort of our 2 organizations, as you know. What we do is we explore one of the least analyzed realities of the Latin American region, which is the interaction of local capital with international capital. So it's a very complex issue, but this scenario is also encouraging with a view to the future. There has been a 7-8% decrease, but the recovery has already started. Raw materials, export, financial markets, they've all been recovering, and we're optimistic about the future. Now, when it comes to analyzing the Latin American situation, it's important to know that the way in which Latin American companies interact with other companies and other environments from the rest of the world is absolutely crucial. So let's begin. What is our Global LATAM report? It's an analytical tool, reference analytical tool, which looks at the performance of Latin American companies in the world. So countries that send and receive capital, etc. It's a 360-degree analysis of this financial phenomenon, which, as I was saying earlier, is rather scarcely analyzed by experts. One of our main goals as an institution is to attract investments. And Latin America is a very important investor for Spain. But at the same time, Latin America needs to generate economic intelligence and find out what's going on in this digitalization process to attract investment flows from Spain. The technology we use is quite complex. We use private databases, greenfield, data from central banks. We carry out interviews with regional experts and so on and so forth. But I would like to stress that this project is carried out jointly by the Spanish-speaking America. We've cooperated, for example, with FIDESP, one of the main industrial confederations of Brazil and all of Latin America, COMSE from Mexico, Axon Barrios, a private capital fund that has offices throughout all of Latin America, especially in Bogota. We also cooperate with business schools such as the Fundación Jan Cabral and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Chile. So, what you can see on screen is a photograph of where capital is being invested in Latin America. We're talking about an accumulated $750–60 billion that have been invested outside of the region altogether over the years. We've had years of deindustrialization, of poor growth, and still, in those years, Latin American companies invested the highest amounts of resources abroad ever. Latin American companies keep on investing. Once again, abroad. And as you can see from the graph, Mexico is the economy that has invested most assets. The economy that has invested the least assets is Brazil. If we divide it by the size of their respective countries, we can get a rough idea of each economy's potential for expansion. And the strongest country is probably Chile in this regard, although we have to say that Peru is currently doing quite well too. There are a number of political and financial factors that we won't be looking at right now. So here's the investment flows for the past few years. We're talking about 30, 40, 50 $1 million a year. In commodities, in 2012, we reached $60 million, but that's the size of investments, more or less. And what happened in 2020? That's what you might be wondering at this point. In 2020, of course, there was a decrease in Latin American investments abroad of 90%. The vast majority of large Brazilian companies reinvested their profits and dividends into the country, which is sort of hiding the reality of what is going on. Because in the case of Brazil, we actually had a 2% increase. And a 2% increase in Latin American foreign investments is positive, because last year the total decrease globally was 40%. So that's encouraging. On top of that, this 40% decrease in the case of Colombia was a lot lower, 39%, in Argentina lower, in Chile 15%, and in Mexico even companies invested 55% more in 2020 than they did in 2019. In Costa Rica, for example, foreign investments were also expanded. In this regard, although all Latin American economies publish data regarding the reception of foreign investment, with the exception of Venezuela and Cuba, as far as foreign investments, Ecuador and the Dominican Republic are the only ones to do so. Sorry, they're the only ones not to be integrated in this database we currently generated. What you can see on screen are bond emissions of Latin American countries internationally, and that's fundamental to understand what's going on, how much Latin America can invest and how capable companies are of emitting bonds. They're two sides of the same coin. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of these investments have been made precisely because of this open market vocation that local companies have. The crisis of the 80s was overcome in about 8 years. So countries had access to the market after about 8 years. And now, a couple of months back, Peru was finally able to issue its own bonds once again. It's good news. We can be moderately optimistic because Latin American companies do not seem to be struggling to access capital in 2021-2022. What you can see now is the large operations that were conducted in 2020. I strongly encourage you to look deeper into these investments. We have a few classical operations, mining, for example, in Brazil, or Copetrol, operations that amount to about $1–2 billion each. But we also have American Mobile, for example, a service company, direct competitor of the Spanish company Telefónica. So through our report, we analyzed the performance of a number of different companies, but one thing I'd like to highlight is that the largest players of the region kept on investing, but by doing something different than the past. MSHM, for example, which is a very famous Mexican company, opened an innovation center. It bought out a startup in Israel, and through this purchase, they will be able to generate a competitive advantage in their domestic market. This strategy is becoming increasingly common. For example, Cemex Ventures. Cemex Ventures has been investing risk capital throughout the whole value chain of the infrastructure globally. It's also very interesting. It's something we looked at in the report. What you can currently see on screen is where Latin America has been investing. The grey bars, I'm sure you can't see them too clearly from over there, represent the investment of Latin America in its own region. That amounts normally to about 50–60%. Although in 2020 there was a reduction. Investments were mostly directed abroad. They targeted foreign projects. The main non-regional destination is the US. There are about 40 million Latinos living in the US, and as a result, a number of companies invest in that market. The TREMEC agreement, the free trade agreement for North America, obviously plays a big role in this. And then we have Europe and Spain in particular. What's interesting here is that last year, which is represented by the yellow line you can see, Latin American companies started investing in Asia as well, in China, and that was the great unexplored market.
Natura, for example, the Brazilian cosmetics company is expanding. UVG, Brazilian company that produces engines, is also expanding in China. There is also being expansion in Indonesia, etc., etc. This is an important trend, and we believe that it's going to be maintained in the few years ahead of us. What this slide shows basically are the investments by sector. There is less importance being placed on the metrics of direct international or foreign investment, and there is more interest in investing on digital assets. In gray, you can see the operations between March and October of 2020, and as you can see, they increased in the sector of logistics, business services, marketing, research and development, which really gathers all the movement of the startup environment. Falabella, which is the equivalent of the Corte Inglés in Chile, the big retail company, closed its doors in Chile, but at the same time we're seeing record sales of Mercado Libre, which is equivalent to Amazon in Latin America. They are listed in the Nasdaq, and they are really having record sales. I would like to briefly mention two trends that we have observed. They have to do with Latin American capital going outwards, abroad. Global LATAM is generating new information in different narratives, and this report is really able to capture what is happening right below the largest players. They analyze multi-Latin operations. So what we did was basically to analyze VC funds. This is the first time this the destination of VC funds investment was analyzed. I would also like to refer to scale-ups. Scale-ups are startups that are in expansion in the region and are leading several internationalization processes. Many of them are a result of hubs. Two of them are here in the picture. One of them is Cuba, which is a Itaú Bank hub, and then there is Ruta N in Medellin, which, as you know, it's a private and public partnership, and it is having a great transformative capacity in the city of Medellin. Like Pablo said, in recent years, we started seeing an increasing number of operations. And if we add them up, we are talking about $11 billion invested by Latin America abroad in technology through funds. So this is super sophisticated investment through instruments and investment funds. Why is this happening? Because in a context of maximum liquidity, there is a greater appetite for technology. But it is also happening because fund managers of private capital in Latin America are more mature, and because those fund managers are investing where they have more mature and sophisticated markets, like the United States or the European Union. So what we have in this analysis is that we looked at the headquarters of this venture capital headquarters, and they're in Argentina, in Mexico, Chile, Brazil. We analyzed the type of investment, so where did they invest? Like I said, this report was done by ICEX and us. You won't find this at ECLAC or the World Bank or the IDB, and we're very proud of it. I was saying earlier that in terms of traditional investments, investment in neighboring countries is really the main destination of investment operations. But in this type of funds, the main destination is the United States, firstly, and then in second place, the European Union, Spain. There's a lot of investment in bio services, financial services, and software. This slide shows the importance of this phenomenon. Why do we analyze venture capital? Because in a certain way, it's the fuel that fires up startups so that they can go to international markets. Here we have two entrepreneurs from Caracas, Venezuela. They go to Santiago in Chile for a program of investment promotion. They start invoicing, and then they see that regional funds start looking at them. There is a Mexican fund and other funds. So what VC fund will ask the startup is scalability. So this company called Colecta, which is a fintech that does machine bots for payments, ends up expanding to different countries in the region: Paraguay, Mexico, Colombia, the United States, etc. We have an entry of ventures and an international exit of companies, which is why we need to trace venture capital. But this is also happening here in Spain. We have startups with investment of Mexican funds in co-investment with Spanish funds, and they are boosting the internationalization of Spanish startups. This started happening a couple of years ago. For example, we have here De La Capital, Seaga Ventures, and they're expanding in the United States thanks to Mexican and Spanish capital. So the instant picture is completely different. The geography of technological capital is very different, and we're very interested in capturing this new landscape from Global LATAM project. Scale-ups. We will be devoting a lot of attention in next year's report. This is the only slide that is not ours. This does not belong to our report. It belongs to the Inter-American Development Bank, and it talks about the technological startups that are growing in Latin America. They're called Tecnolatinas. If we take the year 2010, we see that they've increased their value in market by $214 billion, while traditional companies have lost $489 billion. These companies grow much faster. They have less physical assets. They are super agile, and they are at the forefront of an investment round in the region. We have some examples here. Gympass from Brazil, the fintech new bank from Brazil as well, Despegar, which is an Argentinian company, or Auto, which is a security company, a cloud security company. This is very interesting because the IDB says there are several companies that can be classified as scale-ups, and they are looking forward to a new round of investment from international or from foreign investment. So there will be a good opportunity for investment in Spain or through Spain. Another of the issues we analyzed this year was sustainability as an instrument for internationalization. Sustainability is deeply connected with internationalization through regulation and through the fact that more consumers are demanding more sustainable products. And Latin America has companies like Natura, which in the cosmetics sector is the most sustainable company in the world. They have all their inputs provided from the Amazon. They have eliminated all plastic from their retail stores. There are several opportunities in Latin America for sustainability, for the creation of competitive advantage through sustainability. What we have done here is that we've analyzed the land, farmable land, and other resources in Latin America. You can look at the report because I cannot really explain and comment in depth, but it is well known that one of the pioneering countries that has moved their cars through a sugarcane biofuel has not been Germany or the United States, it's been Brazil. They have a great innovation capacity through renewable sources. And a type of sustainability that we analyzed and think can be applied to sectors such as the agro-industry, agro-foods, and other sectors attached to commodities value chains. Like I said, I invite you once again to have a look at the report because we will keep analyzing this in the next edition of our report. Finally, to finish, Latin American capital arriving in Spain. For Latin American companies, Spain is a destination perceived with high institutional stability, with a good level of regulation, and that gives certainty, macroeconomic certainty. They don't have the volatility that Latin American companies suffer from sometimes. In addition, it is a source of talent, it is the gateway to European markets, etc. One of the largest Latin American companies that have chosen Spain is this one, Chemo, or Insupharma, one of the main biotech companies from Argentina, which, by the way, will be producing a COVID vaccination in Argentina. We have a factory from Bimbo in Spain, the company Avellanas, which is operating from Madrid to 6 markets in Europe. Then there is a Pichincha Bank, when the Ecuadorian diaspora started coming to Spain, many offices from this bank opened. Then there's a Telefónica Group and Guaira, which is receiving a large amount of Latin American entrepreneurs constantly. Latin America is very important for Spain for several reasons, but also because of the investment that those companies do here. So yes, Chinese investment is important, but Latin American investment is more important. After the United States or after the UK and France, the next big investor is Latin America with a joint value of 43 billion. If we add up the operations in holdings, actually, we would reach the $60 billion mark. And I would like to remind Latin American entrepreneurs who are watching us that internationalization by investment of neighboring countries sometimes can have many advantages if you use a holding, a European holding. So sometimes companies and investment operations in the region are expanding through a Spanish vehicle. in the region. So the investment of Latin American capital in Spain is long-term. Mexico is at the lead. Mexico has a very sophisticated investment in Spain. They cover a wide range of investment of economic sectors, but it's true that, well, each country is different. For example, Argentina is highly connected to the arrival of entrepreneurs. Uruguay is a transit country. Venezuela is centered in the purchase of Galician banks. After the reform of 2008 and 2012, with the fiscal reform in Spain. You can find that information in our report. Latin America invests in sectors of high value. Many of these investments are operating in consultancy businesses and services, etc. There are some operations that are out of the radar, and we recognize that, like the property businesses, because it's channeled through family offices. But there are some research that signals that 80% of the investment in this sector is being carried out in Madrid from Venezuelan, Peruvian, and Mexican capital. What we can see is that there's been a shift in the interest of real estate, and now it has moved from Miami to Madrid. There is a higher sophistication. In the 90s, we had Cemex investing in a Valencian cement factory, and now we have Cemex doing venture capital from Madrid to the world. I think this is a transition in the business strategy that shows the growing sophistication of Latin American investment in Spain. I would like to finish by commenting that for Spain, Latin American investment is very important, but for Latin America, it's also very important to invest in Spain. They are the second largest destination for investment of Latin American capital abroad, right behind the United States, which is what we're showing here. Just to comment that during COVID, Latin American investments in Spain increased, mainly on holdings. These are all the operations that have happened in 2020. There are Latin American operations in Spain. So have investment reduced? No, not at all. Quite the contrary. A large number of operations have been executed, and many companies, many startups have trusted in Spain, and they have expanded to Spain in the midst of the pandemic. I would just like to comment that from ISEX Investment Spain, we are carrying out a large amount of international activities. They are all of them online, but let's hope that towards the end of this year we can go back to in-person events. These are the activities we use to sell these business opportunities and our different capital attraction programs in Santiago, Bogotá, Lima, or in Mexico City, just to name a few. This is all from my behalf. I invite you to visit our website, is ISEX Investment Spain. Download the report, and of course, if you have any doubts, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you very much. And thank you for your attention. Thank you to both of you. You can abandon the stage on the left side, and with this, we come to the end of this first day of Madrid Platform, the international business hub between Europe and Latin America. Thank you to all of you who were with us in person in the auditorium of Centro Centro, but also in the rest of the rooms. I want to thank you all of those of you who followed our activities on streaming online. I want to invite you to come back and join us tomorrow, because Madrid Platform will happen for the next 2 days. Madrid Platform will start at 10 Spanish time, and we promise you another exciting day. Thank you. That's all. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.